If you have questions about the Catholic faith, then get ready, because tonight we have two guests that will give you the answers. So please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to tonight's guests, I want to mention that today is the feast of St. John of the Cross. He was born in 1542, and at age 26, he met a considerably older nun who had already started a reform of the Carmelite sisters. And she asked him to help her bring a reform for the men. And so St. John joined her and started the Discalced Carmelite men. And two things went on. First, there was the reform of the order. They were needing to be more strict in the way of their observance. But then there was also his personal growth and his own mysticism. And he has become a doctor of the church for his mystical writings. We want especially to pray today for the Carmelites, that God would bless them with many vocations and help them to help the rest of us in the church to grow in holiness. And I can't forget, want to remember our good friends, the Carmelites out in Wyoming. They provide coffee and tea for me. I can't forget them. Yeah, really. If you ever need coffee or tea, go to those mystic monks. They're on the internet. They do a great job, and I want to especially remember them today. All right, now for our guests tonight. They have answered thousands of questions about the Catholic faith, both through their books, like the Catholicism Answer Book and Catholicism for Dummies, and some other work they're doing for dummies, as well as their ongoing EWTN series, which is the Crash Course in Catholicism and Web of Faith. So please welcome great friends of the network and friends of mine, Father John Trigilio and Father Kenneth Brighenti. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Thanks, man.
Good to have you here. You've been working on your series this week. Mm-hmm. How's it going?
Oh, it's grueling, but it's fun.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many shows have you done so far?
Well,
we did 13.
13 already.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah, they're 1 hour episodes, so.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Yeah.
You have some more to do?
No, we're just going to be doing bookmarks tomorrow.
And all
yes.
that. And you've also been writing.
Yes.
Yeah, what have you, tell us about your writing too.
Well, we did the Catholic Mass for Dummies, and we had that done just in time for the new changes in the English translation of the third edition of the Roman
Missal.
Missal.
Is that right? Let me get a copy of that and hold that up so people can see. It's called the Catholic Mass for Dummies. And this is part of your Dummies series. Right.
Yes.
And we should make note that we didn't choose the name Dummies. That's part of
the series.
750. Well, we get questions about that.
Right.
It's part of the series, which there's like 750 titles.
Right.
You know, you find it in Barnes & Nobles and Amazon. Here at EWTN, studios sell it. And they asked us to write recently the Catholic Mass for Dummies because they knew the changes were in the translation were coming out. So.
Oh, that's marvelous. It's marvelous. So you were able to use the new translation.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And help people with that. What else there's a number of things to deal with Mass. I mean, you must have dealt with the theology of the liturgy, right?
Yes. There were biblical roots of the Mass, and then we, of course, we did the doctrine, and we spoke about transubstantiation, and then we spoke about the different types of Mass, the Byzantine, because of they have so many of the traditions there. We were only able to put St. John Chrysostom's Mass in the book to talk about it.
And the Mass of St. John Chrysostom is for the Byzantine rite.
Right. But we realize that there are many other rites in the Catholic Church, but that's the one that the company allowed us to put in because that's the largest one in the United States. We also talked about the extraordinary form of the Mass, and then the new translation was the most recent part.
And when you say extraordinary form, what do you mean by that?
That's the Mass prior to 1969. It would be the Mass from the Council of Trent. All the way up to roughly about 1969 is when the new translation took place in the new Mass, the Novus Ordo. So Pope Benedict had given the term extraordinary form and ordinary form. Extraordinary form for the Mass of what people would know as the Tridentine Mass, and then the Novus Ordo would be the Mass that Pope Paul VI, under his reign, it took place.
Right. So. You describe all of that because a lot of people have questions about a lot of Catholics have questions.
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, any number of times I would get questions about the new translation and say, why are we going back to have everything in Latin? And some people thought that we were going to have everything in Latin instead of just a good translation from Latin. So that's good. So you deal with that. Do you deal with one of the issues that I get a lot of questions about on my radio show is rubrics. Do you talk much about rubrics?
Oh yeah, we talk about rubrics, and we explain.
First of all, explain what rubrics is.
Well, rubrics are the in the now the Roman Missal, or what we used to call the sacramentary, the text in red print that tells the priest what to do, how to do it, the instructions. It's sort of like when you're doing the recipe, it tells you how many cups and things of sugar or milk to use. Well, the rubrics tell the priest what to do, when to do it, and then the black ink text tells him the actual words he says out loud. So there was a phrase a priest coined, Father Zulsdorf, was to do the red and say the black.
There's a little stumper. Do you know where that tradition of putting the instructions in red and the words to be said in black, do you know where that originated?
Must be some Jesuit.
No. No. Egypt. It was in the papyri.
Wow.
In the Egyptian papyri, they would have the instructions in red and the text in black. And we're continuing a tradition with that goes all the way back to the pharaohs.
Well, now you could have told us that earlier. We could have put that in the book.
See?
You could write in the question for the Web of Faith show.
Okay, there you go.
And we also cover, besides the rubrics, which obviously you've been getting questions about, the different articles that are used, besides the most obvious things like the chalice and the paten, things like the chalice veil, the burse, the different kind of vestments. And because we also cover the Eastern Church, we give a little explanation of some of the different vestments that would be used, say, in the Ruthenian or Ukrainian Church. And we do explain or list the different Eastern churches so that we don't want people to think that we left them out, but for space concerns, we could only put in the Divine Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom.
One of these days, you just might have to do the Eastern rites for dummies. Just cover all 22 rites.
That's right.
And give people, that would be a great book.
Yes.
There's a lot of interest in that.
We also covered architecture in there, the different styles from the Romanesque, the Renaissance, Gothic, Baroque, the neoclassical style, and then now in the postmodern era, how they're recovering a lot of these styles, maybe retranslating them a little bit, using different material. But basically, you see that some of the new churches that are being built are in the cruciform. They're using
Which means
a dome.
what?
It's a shape of a cross.
Okay.
So that you have a transept for the side, and then the sanctuary would be the top part of the cross, and the nave, where the people will sit, would be the long part of the cross. And then sometimes they might even sit in the transept as well. So a lot of new churches that are being built now are going back to the traditional style. but maybe reinterpret it a little bit. Maybe the way the seating is more angular or material that they use. But nevertheless, they feel that the classical style doesn't really go out, and it's very conducive to worship.
Yeah. Do you find that, because in the 60s a bit, but more in the 70s and later, there were a number of different styles of church architecture. It seems that didn't win the favor of the folks.
No, it didn't.
Didn't get a sense of beauty.
The people didn't like it. Many of the clergy didn't like it. And I think even the bishops didn't like it, but they got bamboozled by some of these architects who kept saying, well, this is the cutting edge. Plus, there was a big lie being told, you can't do it the old way, it's too expensive. And Mother Angelica proved that wrong when they built the shrine out there in Hansville. The artisans are there. It can be done at an economical basis. And there's a theology behind it besides the, sort of the social room. Some of these places look like rest stops on the turnpike, if not something worse. And the focus is on the congregation, not on the sacrifice, not on the real presence, not on the transcendence of God, but on the people. And you see people all day long. You need, when you come together, and it's not to deny that there's not a mystical presence of God in the believers, but they're there for a purpose, to worship the Lord.
And we went in through that period of ugly colors, beige and brown, and it was sometimes some of those churches built in the 70s and 80s were very depressing when you walk in. Brick walls, brown carpet, beige, very heavy, and the Second Vatican Council said to use noble material and for art and beautiful art. Some of these altars that were just veneers and plywood and didn't last at all.
Butcher blocks.
And it's interesting because I have this church architecture magazine that I get, and in it shows that these structures that were built in the 70s, 80s, the areas are booming in building and community. Now they need to build new churches, and the church styles are building are in the more the classical style. Mm-hmm. And what they're using the old church is maybe offices now, or they're tearing it down completely. Yeah. So it just completely not needs their needs.
There were a number of churches I went to where I could just hear the distant rumble of the caterpillars getting ready to bulldoze them down, because they just weren't beautiful.
Well, even logistically, I was an associate in one of these type of churches. It was a church built in the 50s that was turned on its side in the 80s. And the poor brides, they had to go in like it would be the traditional aisle, but then they had, that's not.
The brides?
To come down the aisle.
For weddings. Oh, okay.
They had to go make a right, then make a left, and then down the center. And same with the casket. It was a logistical nightmare. And so now, we're very thankful that we're recapturing our past. Yes, reinterpreting it to our needs today. I mean, definitely we have, elevators and bathrooms, and so that will, and there might be a different change in the style in that way. But the basic form, which has always been so conducive to liturgy, is being recaptured.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so these are some of the things that you cover.
Right.
One of my favorites. There's some of these churches I've been to. I'll never forget one up in northern Illinois, where I kept walking around to find where the Blessed Sacrament was. Right. I mean, it wasn't in the main church, and then there was a side chapel, and they said it was there, and then there was a jungle of plants truly covering it up. I mean, I couldn't find it. And so I dubbed them Churches of St. Mary Magdalene. Yeah. They have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they placed him.
And we also say sometimes you need a GPS to find the Blessed Sacrament.
Yeah. Right.
But we had a problem like that in our diocese, and our bishop changed that. He said there was like a Blessed Sacrament room off the main chapel, a church, and he said you have to have the Blessed Sacrament in the main church for people to adore on Sunday. So that's how they met the need there. So they changed it.
Good. Now, besides writing, you're doing the Web of Faith. That's your new series.
Yes.
So this is an hour a week where you're answering emails. Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of emails to answer?
Oh yeah, we pull them off the internet from the EWTN webpage.
Okay.
Our producer Steve Beaumont, goes to the webpage, and there's a section there in the faith section, questions and answers, and so we have a number of questions from the different areas, liturgy, from doctrine, catechetics, and what we've done this time, which is different that's why it's called Web of Faith 2.0, because
so that's
it's an
the new
improvement.
name of it.
Improvement from the first one. We have a little section where we get a particular expert, like an expert in canon law, there's an expert in liturgy, expert in church history, and we give them a particular question that's just oriented towards their expertise. And so we'll throw a question to them, and they'll answer it through the electronic video communication.
Oh, so you're getting other folks who are, maybe more specialized.
Exactly. It might be something about annulments, might be something about some particular aspect of philosophy, maybe. Mm-hmm. And so we'll throw the question to them. And so every episode, there may be 2 or 3 of our experts who all day long will answer questions on the EWTN webpage.
They gave us a copy after the 13th episode of all the questions we asked. We wanted to keep them, and it's about this 47 pages of questions. And in the seminary where I'm the vice rector at, they have this program for the 4th-year men who are deacons. It's called the Priestly Integration Assessment, and they get it in their 3rd year. And it's a series of questions in all the different disciplines in theology that they have to study, and then they have to have an oral exam. They only have to do 10 minutes. And I said, boy, this felt a lot like the PIA that we were doing in there. So it's very comprehensive, and some of the questions are very long and intense. Mm-hmm. So they're asking very good questions. Mm-hmm. And,
so he's going to use them now on the boys.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I said that. I said I'm going to bring them back some of these questions so they can put it into the book for next year.
Good.
Yeah.
That'd be good. And do you... what would be some of the things that you find most intriguing about the questions? What would be some of the questions that you found, most intriguing to you?
I think the things that intrigued me the most was the sincerity that everybody had, even the people who are saying they're not of the Catholic faith, mm-hmm. or they're maybe just cursory interested. There's a genuine desire to know the truth, as opposed to somebody comes up to you with a chip on their shoulder and says, show me in the Bible where it says that. They're confrontational to begin with. They're not really interested in a dialogue or a discussion. They want some throw the quotes at you debate type of thing. Whereas the people questions we get, they're sincere, they're coming from the heart, they have a genuine desire to know the truth, and they may not exactly agree with you on the spot or say, I want to join RCIA tomorrow, become Catholic, but they're seeking. And that sincerity, I think, really touched my heart, that there's a lot of people who want to know, they're yearning, and I think they're gravitating in the right direction, so hopefully our show will help them.
Yeah. And the questions really run the gamut. They run from everything from technology, like Father John's got his iPad there, so the use of the breviary on the iPad and what acceptable form of the breviary you can get on the iPad were 2 questions to...
What was the answer to that?
Well, you have to use the official breviary because it's a public liturgical prayer of the church and not a private devotion. So the fellow who wrote says, well, I don't really want to pay for the app, but there is an app that's of the official breviary that's free, or you could get the app that you could pay for, and that one also has the sound to it, so which is nice if you're driving in the car. You can have the breviary being prayed as you're driving. So that one you have to pay for. But those are the official breviaries from our approved.
Just like the office that you use in the book form,
right?
You can use it as long as you use the one that's
approved by liturgical authorities.
Because I use it for my breviary, I use it for Mass at the nursing home. I've used it for anointing of the sick.
I used it for baptism because I went recently to a parish and they set everything up was beautiful. Candle was lit, everything, except the book wasn't there and the sacristy door was locked. So I had the ritual on my breviary, on my iPhone, and was able to call it. And then, of course, the priest came in right at the last moment. He saw that the door was locked and came in and gave me the book. But I was ready and I had it, so it was a great saving tool.
He did get a dirty look though from some lady who was visiting the seminary, and she saw him with his iPhone in
So
the
she
chapel.
thought I was texting during
She thought
Mass
he was texting or tweeting somebody, and he said, "No, I'm doing my office." "No, you're not."
So we said maybe that was another question. So we said maybe you should have like a little leather cover over it, So sometimes people don't understand. You're not doing your phones. You're not doing.
They have like virtual ribbons on the side.
Whereas this here looks like a booklet when it's closed, so there's no question that you're not doing phone business on there. But the little iPhone, can send signals.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to the point of using one of these things yet, but I didn't realize that all these other books, like the ritual is
Funeral,
everything's there except ordination to priesthood and bishop and deacon and exorcism.
You have to have a bishop's app.
Yeah. Yeah, they're keeping that to themselves. But anything a priest would need, the cemetery, a wedding, or now obviously, normally speaking, a priest would usually use the ritual because it looks proper and that. But
Sure.
in an instance like I said, at a nursing home,
right.
that missal is so big and it's so cumbersome to take with you. In many places, you're confined space. And like if you're doing your breviary, traveling on the plane or the train or whatever. So, and then the priest who did the one version of it is in Italy, and in fact he got the Vatican to give the stamp of approval on it.
Okay, cool.
And of course, you were mentioning Pope Benedict is very.
He's lighting the Christmas tree by an iPad.
Right.
He's hitting the pad.
Is that right?
It's going to turn on the tree by electric tablet.
Isn't that something? That's something. Now, one of the things, because this certainly happens to me, on the radio show. Do you find questions that stump you, or do you just not bring those into the studio?
Well, I want the official answer.
Sir.
I want the real story.
Well, there's always somebody who wants to stump the band, as they say on the old Johnny Carson show, and there's some people that want to, push the envelope or have an agenda. But then you get some genuine questions where we got to look it up.
There is a little bit of a delay, so you do have a chance to look in for the answer if you don't have it right off in your mind. So that like 10-minute delay sometimes does help. You could preview the question and then look up for the answer.
Just like with radio, so when I'm doing Catholic radio, I got my webpage up and I'm looking at EWTN and they're calling in and I'm typing in there very vociferously and.
Yeah, the best I can do, I've got, I had a question today about a priest who was, he was doing something incorrect. Oh, he was changing some of the words at Mass. And so I typed in my computer and I have the documents of Vatican II in there. And I went to paragraph 22 of the Constitution on the Liturgy and said, no one, not even the priest, has the authority to change anything in the liturgy. So and I could give that to her and said, now go look this up yourself and bring a copy of it to your priest and tell him he doesn't have that authority.
Right. Yeah, and that helps because when we're answering the questions, there's always some that are in the same field. So you would have something like that from the Code of Canon Law about how many times someone could receive communion or something about from the catechism.
How many times can they receive communion?
Twice is the limit on one day, unless, of course, you're dying and you receive viaticum more than if there was some bizarre way in which you were dying 3 or 4 different ways, you could receive it. But normally speaking, the canon says you can only receive twice in one day, and they have to be in the context of a Mass, at least one of them.
Right. So these are the kind of practical things that I don't think a lot of people have heard in the religion classes or catechism classes. Oftentimes, that's just not covered.
Yeah, it's considered too technical or too complicated, maybe.
Well, and that's really why we started to write the first book, Catholicism for Dummies. We were asked because it's a great tool for RCIA. It's a great tool for high school.
That's right.
And it has an imprimatur on it, so it's
both of them.
Yes, right. And so therefore, it can be used as a catechism. This is the second edition, just came out, Catholicism for Dummies, in this November.
Okay.
So we added.
Did you change something?
Well, we added.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a change.
20%.
20% was the publisher's mandate, which was easy because the first one came out in 2003.
Okay.
So since then,
Pope Benedict
the 16th, some other things with happening around the world in the church, and some things where we gave more attention to, which we didn't do the last time.
Great. Now, one thing you mentioned that you're bringing in experts. Who's the canon lawyer that you're using, or do you use a number of them?
Well,
Yes.
the one we have.
I think that was Mr. Flummerfelt.
Blumenfeld, yes. He's on regularly on the expert, the webpage,
Okay.
EWTN. They have a number of other people answering, but we used only like 3 or 4 experts
Okay.
in the series. But when people go to the EWTN webpage, Faith, Question, and Answer, there'll be like maybe several different experts in each division.
Okay.
Because they get hundreds, if not thousands, of questions.
Right.
And it's hard to keep up. A lot of people say, "You didn't answer my question right away." Well.
And many of them
Well,
are a
that's-
variation of the same theme. So
Right.
that's why we're hoping with the Web of Faith show, a lot of those questions that were written in that you can't get to because it's so overwhelming, that it will cover a multitude of the questions that were asked. So there's a running theme in some of the questions. Like
Yeah.
liturgically, like the liturgical colors at Mass, what are the 4 colors, or that's a running theme, or can you use blue for Advent, which you cannot.
No.
Yeah, you cannot use blue. That was another question. You can only use purple.
Violet.
Or violet, yes.
The sisters always corrected us.
yes.
It's not purple, it's violet.
Right,
And it's
it's
rose.
not,
It's
and not
rose and
pink.
not pink.
That's right.
That's right.
Real men don't wear it.
So that, and you'll have many questions that will have a similar theme, and so hopefully through the Web of Faith show, that it will be your question will be answered, even though it might be specific.
That's one of the things. The same problem with Threshold of Hope. I get so many questions, and I've only got a few minutes, each program to answer email questions, plus the phone call questions and all that. And you just do your best, but it takes a while to get to
They're
them.
good questions, and you
They
feel bad
are.
that
They are.
it's almost like there's not enough time in the world to answer all of them. but
Exactly.
you do
And
what
some
you
are
can.
very practical, like the holy days of obligation.
Sure.
And when are they an obligation and when they're not. So
Yes.
We said in the show, nowadays with the way the formula works, you need a compass and a calendar to figure out when the holy days apply.
Why a compass?
A compass, because it depends on what part of the country you live in. For instance, here in the South, the Ascension Thursday was moved to a Sunday. Where I am in Pennsylvania, we keep it on Ascension Thursday, the 40th day after Easter.
Right.
You also need the calendar, because if it falls on some of the holy days, like All Saints Day, if it falls on a Saturday or a Monday, it's not obligatory.
But of course, in the United States, one holy day of obligation, two actually, if it falls on a Saturday or on a Monday, the obligation is
You said that.
Did you? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Put a block in this here.
Yeah.
Well, what did you tell them? Immaculate Conception and Christmas. Yeah.
Those are the exceptions, no
Yeah.
matter what
Right.
day they fall on.
Right.
Immaculate Conception and Christmas are obligatory.
Right.
Right. You didn't say that part.
I didn't say that part, but I did
Yeah.
say about the Saturday and the Monday.
Right.
Unless you're in Rome. Then in Rome, they've got 4 extra holy days.
What are they?
We've got the Corpus Christi.
Okay.
You've got the Feast of the Epiphany.
Right.
Peter and Paul.
Right.
And San Giuseppe.
And St. Joseph.
St. Joseph.
Yes.
Wow. See, so it depends, where you go.
That's why you need a compass and a calendar.
And then, of course, in the different rites, there are different holy days
Yeah.
of obligation. So for the Feast of St. Maron is a holy day of obligation in the Maronite rite. And so and so is Epiphany. So that's all those things vary. Well, we need to take a break.
Okay.
We're going to come back in a couple of minutes, and we want to get your questions. We've been talking about answering questions. Come on, try to stump them. Make sure that they know their stuff. And there's no experts to help them out here. So come on with your questions, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you, and welcome back. First of all, I'd like to invite you to come down here to be part of our studio audience. I know, especially after the holidays, a number of folks from up north will be going down to the south to defrost, and shake some of the snow off and get down some sand between your toes down in Florida. If you're coming through this way on I-65 or one of the other surrounding, or I-20, or some of the other surrounding interstates, please come by and stop here with us. We'd love to have you as part of our studio audience. And you can contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966. Or if you prefer, you can go to our website, www.ewtn.com, and you can get more information there. They'll help you with where you can stay and scheduling of masses, programs, tours of the studio, and all that. We'd love to have you come by and be part of us. So please consider doing so. You ready for some questions?
We're ready, Mitch.
All right, let's go. Sir, where are you from?
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
And your question?
My question is, at our parish, we use a Advent wreath, and some of the other parishes in our city do that as well. And I found out recently that was a Lutheran tradition, and I was curious if that's acceptable in the Catholic liturgy.
Well, what do you think?
Well, first of all, the idea of bringing evergreens into the church and into the sanctuary even predates the Lutheran Church. It really comes from the pagan Roman times, and they would bring it in to remind them around this time of year, around the 25th of December, to remind them of the eternal spring, the hopefully of that the sun will be getting stronger in the northern hemisphere, spring will be coming back. And so since the evergreen doesn't lose its color, it remains green, it's like a pledge that spring will be coming back to them. So when the Catholic Church is establishing its festivals and feasts, and throughout the world, sometimes we take things from culture that we are being missionaries to, that are benign in themselves, nothing bad in them, and then we sort of like Christianize it and give it a Christian theme. So evergreen then, the symbol of spring, can also be the eternal spring. And with the eternal spring is, of course, Christ our Savior.
Right.
And He is the resurrection and the life. So He pledges to us through His victory. So the green then and the evergreen gives us that pledge. Plus, wreaths themselves were used to symbolize eternity, because it's a complete circle. Beginning used to put wreaths on doors when people have passed away as a symbol of sorrow. But through the evergreens that we place on our doors, Christmas wreaths, or in the church with an Advent wreath, again, it's a sign of Christ, it's a sign of eternity, and a sign of that pledge that is given to us, why He was born, to die and to rise and to give us eternal life. So there's really nothing contradictory in that, and to use it. And then simply the 4 candles correspond to the 4 Sundays of Advent. The 3 violet candles symbolize the 3 Sundays that we wear purple or violet vestments, and then the 1 rose color one is used for Gaudete Sunday, Rejoice Sunday, the 3rd Sunday in Advent, and which symbolizes Advent's half over.
Right. And the reason for 4 weeks is that there were about 4,000 years from Adam to Christ in the Old Testament. So it's 1 week for each 1,000 years. So
it works out.
Right.
Works out pretty well. Let's go to a caller. Hello, Joe?
Yes, hello.
Hi, where are you from?
Kalispell, Montana.
Great. And what is your question?
Earlier, Father John and Father Kenneth mentioned that vestments that the priest wears in their new book, the Catholic Mass for Dummies. Could you please tell us the origin of vestments that the priests wear?
There you go. Great question.
Very good question. I know Father Ken did a lot of research on there, so I'll let him take the question. But there's a dual level in a lot of the things the church, like he says, they appropriate some things. Some of the things came from ordinary Roman usage, but a lot of it came from the Hebrew practice of the priesthood, particularly the high priest in the temple of Jerusalem.
Right, and if you look at some of the high priest vestments of the sacrifice, the temple, which doesn't exist anymore, you'll see that their vestments are similar to what the priest would wear today. They had a sort of an alb, a white robe
made out of linen.
Made out of linen, and then a more ornate vestment that went over that alb, which we call a chasuble, and they, of course, they had the 12 squares on the high priest, which symbolizes the 12 tribes of Israel, and each had a different color stone. So some of the colors then came from that, and then the high priest also wore a headgear which is similar to what a bishop would wear as a mitre. So these are the origins in our Judeo-Christian past that we borrowed over. The different styles of vestments over the years, the Gothic style that we most see on Sunday, or the Baroque style, which was around the 1600s and still used today, commonly sometimes known as the Roman vestment or the fiddleback. Those are liturgical styles that came in and are used, but the origin...
They're basic variations.
They're basic,
on,
right,
on
this
the original.
Right.
Okay. By the way, I almost forgot, I had a question myself. You're talking about the evergreen as a symbol of the spring, and Christ is the eternal spring and all that. What about in Texas, when they make their Christmas wreaths out of dried chili peppers? What does that symbolize?
Heartburn? Well, that does lead into another.
It's still a circle.
It's still a circle.
On Palm Sunday, we're used to seeing palms, but in many parts of the world, it was very difficult or impossible to get palms. So, like in the Ruthenian Ukrainian Catholic Church, they use pussy willows in place of palms because it was difficult to get them.
And also in some Romance countries like Spain and Italy, they sometimes use olive branches.
Right.
For
In
Palm
Jerusalem,
Sunday.
they use both,
Right.
palms and olive branches. Yeah. All right. We have a question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
We just moved to Bonita Springs, Florida, but
Great.
we came from Manassas, Virginia.
Great. And what is your question?
The question is, last Thursday during Mass for the Immaculate Conception, Feast of the Immaculate Conception, there was a reading. First reading was about from Genesis. God said, I will put enmity between your seed and her seed. What does that mean, your seed? I can understand her seed, that I'm assuming that's Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. But what does it mean, your seed?
Well, I would presume that the seed of the serpent, the seed of is all the evil that the devil produces. Mm-hmm. So not necessarily a person, like some people would say the Antichrist. I think it would be more generic, just the evil that the devil produces, or those who are in league with him.
Right. And it would be all of his associate demons. That would be his seed. But actually, the bigger problem is saying her seed, because the seed is always referring to the male contributing to the conception of a child. So the real difficult question is, how is it that it is her seed? And that is answered in the virginal conception of Jesus, that Mary does not have anything from a man. She says, I know not man. That is by the overshadowing of the Holy Spirit. So that this is something that comes, this is truly Jesus, that is her seed. And it is a prophecy of the virginal conception, in a hidden way. So that's what
we could have used that in the book too. I wish we would have done that.
Call next time.
Expert. You're one of the
time.
experts we're calling. Our lifeline.
Let's go to another call. We have John on the line. Hello, John.
Hi, Father Mitch.
Hey, where are you from?
I'm from Charleston, West Virginia.
Great. Welcome. And what's your question?
My question is, I noticed that the three of you are all wearing a different style or type of collar, and I was just wondering if you could tell us why that is.
You know, that question we get a lot.
Is that right?
A lot of times about that. It's just, right now, it's just a matter of taste. De gustibus non disputandum est. St. Thomas Aquinas often would say, there is no dispute, argument in taste. Yeah. So Father Mitch is wearing what is commonly called the tab shirt, or we used to call it the tongue depressor, because that little white part pops out. This is the original Roman collar the Catholic priest would wear. Now people say, oh, you look like an Anglican or a Jesuit. But this was the original. If you look at a lot of pictures of priests in the 1950s and 30s and that, this was it.
In fact, in the seminary where I'm vice rector, we have a wall of pictures of the different classes, and that was the common style from the time of the beginning up to about the 1950s. Then they went more into the Roman collar style, this is called a rabbi.
The rabbi, and also the military collar, because the way it's constructed, I guess chaplains in the military would often wear that. So his is more formal.
You can also have a style with a vest. So it would just be a collar, and then the vest would be buttoned down to wear it. That's more formal occasions.
Well, see,
it's
sort of like lay people have a power tie. These are power clerics.
There you go, yes.
Whereas the reason I wear my type is because it's wash and wear.
And you can take your jacket off. This one you have to wear your jacket, otherwise you see the shirt, the white shirt.
But thanks for your question, John. We have another caller. Hello, Adrian? Hi, where are you from?
Albany, New York.
Wow.
And your question is what?
I noticed Father Trigilio and Father Levis used to do the Web of Faith.
Right.
And I'm wondering, not that I'm objecting to Father Ken, but what happened to Father Levis?
Thank you. That's a great question. We really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes.
Tell us about Father Levis.
I can tell you about Father Levis. He's still very much alive. He's in a nursing home, St. Mary's Home in Erie. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago at Christmas time, Father Levis fell at a rectory, hit his head, got a concussion, and he had to go in for some rehab. And during the rehab process, he fell again and broke his hips. And so he's been on the mend, but he's now in a nursing home. He has all his mental faculties, and in fact, he said to me, make sure you tell everybody EWTN I love them and I'm praying for them.
Yes.
So he just turned 90 this past summer.
God bless him.
You know, even before he had his accident, it was getting to be a bit much taxing on him physically to come all the way down here. So it's not that we bumped him out of the way. We very respectfully waited until it was absolutely positively clear he couldn't do it anymore. And so then we invited Father Ken. And I've been working with older priests in both cases. He's like 9 months older than me. So.
But in addition, though, I've only done the half-hour shows, the crash course shows, and now these are hour. They're a lot more exhausting, the hour show. So I can understand, Father Levis being, exhausted after doing a 13-hour episodes. So.
Absolutely. Well, God bless him. He has done yeoman's labor in his priesthood, and at age 90, he's just doing well to try to maintain his health. That's enough of a challenge for him right now.
And it's an honor to take that spot there, not to take his place, but to take that spot, because Father Levis has done so much over the past years.
Yes.
So
absolutely. Oh, we have another caller. Tom, hello.
Yes, Father.
Where are you from?
From Virginia.
And what is your question?
My question is concerning the Pope. When he proclaims an individual as saint, is he speaking ex cathedra, or is it an infallible saying that we are bound to believe?
Okay, good question.
Well, he is proclaiming an infallible statement when he's canonizing them saints. When they're beatified, it's not infallible, and there is the whole process that's actually in our Saints for Dummies book. We did the whole process.
You did a Saints for Dummies too?
We did,
yes.
And we did the whole...
What other dummy books have you done?
Women in the Bible for Dummies, John Paul II for Dummies.
Cool.
Saints for Dummies, Catholicism for Dummies, Catholic Mass for Dummies, and then we did a Catholicism answer book, which is like a catechism type question and answer book for a different company. But in there, there is a process. So when a person is sort of being recognized after he died for holiness, they're given the title Servant of God, so their cause is sort of open. And then when it gets a little bit more serious, then they're called venerable. And then after they're venerable, usually a miracle has to be attributed to their intercession, that Almighty God performed this miracle on this certain person. And that miracle, it goes through a battery of tests. Usually they get somebody from medical science, psychologist, all sorts of things that eyewitnesses that are in the medical science. They try to get ones that are not Catholic, so they could be totally objective to say that whatever the case may be, this illness existed before and miraculously it's gone now.
Someone like the miracle for the beatification of Blessed John Paul the Great, is that this nun had a disease, the shaking.
Parkinson's
disease. Parkinson's disease. She had Parkinson's disease, and through his intercession, she was completely healed of it and is gone. And that's not a curable disease.
Right. No. And my cousin, rest in peace, Father Fiora, he worked for the Congregation of Saints for his order called the Salesiani, the Salesians. And he worked on 23 causes for his community. And he traveled around the world. If there was somebody in Colombia, he would go to Colombia, and he would, if there were eyewitnesses, he would take testimony. And he said that on one person alone, he could fill 2 rooms with volumes of paperwork. So when you get to the second miracle that's needed, by the way, Pope John Paul II, as you mentioned, streamlined the cause. It used to be 3 miracles for beatification and 3 miracles for canonization. Now it's 1 for each. So by the time you get to the point that the Pope is going to canonize the saint, it's really beyond a doubt that this person lived a holy and exemplary life.
Right.
And so when he proclaims the canonization at the Mass in St. Peter's, then it is an infallible statement.
Because what he is basically saying, this person is in heaven.
Right.
Whereas in the beatification, they're on the way. That's why many times the popes would not beatify. They left that to another bishop. It was just that Pope John Paul liked doing beatification, so he kind of did more of them.
Right. And it's something else that I always remember the nuns telling us. The church has never declared somebody in hell.
Exactly.
We'll say the ones who are in heaven, but the church never declares that, as an absolute statement of faith, we know this person is in hell. We never, ever do that.
Nor is heaven limited to only the canonized saints.
Hence All Saints' Day.
Right. All right, I have another caller on the line. Hello, Paul?
Yes.
Paul? Yeah, hi, where are you? Where are you from?
Well, I'm up near Rochester, New York, Seneca Falls to be exact.
Great. And what's your question?
Well, I have a quick Bible question. We're always hearing things that are in our Bible that are not in the Protestant Bible, but there's always been this question that's something in the Protestant that is not in ours, and it deals with the Our Father. It's the doxology that we say now in, the new order of Mass, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. What happened there? How come it's not in our Bible and it is in theirs?
Okay.
Well, it was never in the Bible to begin with. It was in some manuscripts.
12th century.
12th century. And what may have happened is when the monks are writing late at night, a monk could have, 3 in the morning, inserted something.
Well, in the Eastern liturgy, that doxology is part of the Lord's Prayer at Mass.
At Mass, but not part of their...
But not in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so that you're probably right. An Eastern monk who knew it from the liturgy put it into the manuscript. But it was a Byzantine manuscript from the 12th century that was brought out of Constantinople when the Turks conquered the city. And that was a Greek manuscript that was used by the 16th century translators. Matter of fact, the last 2 chapters of the book of Revelation were missing from that manuscript. The Catholic Church uses older manuscripts. We have manuscripts at the Vatican that go back to the 4th century, not the 12th century. And those early, none of the early manuscripts before the 12th century have that doxology. So that's where that comes from.
He also mentioned about, I think he was alluding to also that the Catholic Bible is a little bit different in length as the Protestant Bible. And that was one of our questions on the Web of Faith,
Is that right?
Yes. And there are two, for the Old Testament, there's the Hebrew translation, and then there's the Greek Septuagint, which happens to be an older translation.
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
The Hebrew is older. The Septuagint is a translation started in 250 BC in Alexandria from Hebrew into Greek. And in 250 they translated the Torah. And then from 250 till about 50, they translated the rest of the Bible from Hebrew into Greek. So the Hebrew was first.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the Greek Septuagint has more books that we have, and this is the one that the Catholic Church has used. And so some of the Protestant Bibles now include those extra books, but they put them at the back of the New Testament after the book of Revelation. So they're included in many of the Protestant Bibles, but you have to find them there.
As a matter of fact, when the New Testament quotes the Old Testament, it does so 350 times. 300 of the quotes are from the Septuagint. The other 50 are translations by the New Testament writers, their own, from either the Aramaic or the Hebrew. But 300 quotes are from the Septuagint, showing that the early church used the Septuagint when they preached the gospel around the Mediterranean world. Yeah, so that's why it's the official canon. We have another caller, Genevieve.
Good evening, Father.
Hi, where are you from?
Washington, D.C.
And what's your question?
Does the church teach that Adam and Eve were actual individuals? And if yes, then how does that comport with the fossil record? But if no, then how does that affect our understanding of the original fall?
All right.
Well, that's a question we do get in the show and in the book. Pope Pius XII, in Encyclical Humani Generis, made it very clear that we are bound to believe in monogenism, which is that the human race came from one set of human parents. But he did not say that we had to accept any particular explanation of how that came to be. That's for science to figure out. But to give you maybe some interesting spin on that, in the 1980s, two agnostic scientists in England determined that genetically the whole human race can be traced to one woman through mitochondrial DNA. Right. So they're showing that it is scientifically possible. Now, how that comes to be, they're still trying to figure out, but they're saying that it's not several different groups as they originally were telling people in the 70s and 80s, but that the whole human race can be traced to one woman, and her DNA set the whole pattern for Homo sapiens, for human beings. And so because of that, Adam and Eve were real people. Now, how you get from two original parents, the whole human race, even the Bible has all these lacuna or openings in there, because when Cain kills Abel, you go from 4 people in the world down to 3. Why does God put a mark on him? Because who's he afraid of? Who are these other people? Where does his wife come from? They never tell you. The point of it is not to be a biology or history book, but it's a book of faith.
And then, of course, you go to the Holy Land quite frequently, and the Golgotha, where Christ was crucified, in the Hill of Skulls, it's believed that he was crucified right over the bones of Adam. And in fact, I probably remember the old crucifixes, which they had like a skull and the 2 bones there. That symbolizes Adam.
Exactly. And the idea was that the blood of Christ flowed down all, through when the earth cracked in the earthquake. That it went so that the redemption of the whole human race is there. I'm afraid that we can't go on much more because time is over. But I want to thank you both for doing the work that you're doing and for being here tonight. It's great to have you with us. And please join me in blessing our audience.
Absolutely.
Almighty God bless you and keep you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we want to remind you that this network is brought to you by you. And you've been responding. Our needs have been very great, and we are still behind. But in the last couple weeks, you have been helping us start to catch up. We still may be behind for a little while, but your help really makes it possible for us to get out of the red. So please keep us in between your gas bill and your electric bill, and we'll be able to pay all of our bills. God bless you, and thank you very much.